All right, let's talk about Jeff's Island. At first glance, it seems almost insignificant, a tiny speck of land adrift in the turquoise expanse of the Caribbean. Roughly 70 acres of sun-drenched beaches, swaying palms, and vibrant coral reefs located about 50 miles east of Puerto Rico, it could easily be mistaken for any other serene tropical getaway. To a casual observer, it seems idyllic, even modest, a private paradise, perfect for someone seeking refuge from the world. But make no mistake, this small, seemingly innocent island would become one of the most infamous and reviled properties on the planet. Its beauty is a cruel mask, hiding decades of secrecy, corruption, and unimaginable cruelty. Officially, it is known as Little St. James, part of the U.S. Virgin Islands, lying just off the coast of St. Thomas, the capital and largest of the territory's islands. Once celebrated for its sparkling azure waters, soft white sands, and the gentle rustle of tropical breezes, it is now forever linked to something far darker. Its reputation, whispered in hushed tones across the Caribbean, earned it a nickname that evokes fear and disgust: P-Word Island. This small piece of land became a stage for crimes that shook the world, a hidden theater of abuse, power, and impunity. Today, we will uncover how Little St. James transformed from a seemingly peaceful retreat into a global symbol of corruption, secrecy, and horrific sexual exploitation. We will trace the rise of Jeffrey Epstein, a man whose charm and intelligence masked an insatiable hunger for control. We will explore why this isolated island became central to his operations, and we will confront the enduring mysteries that still surround it decades later. We will also examine the recent release of Epstein's files, which continue to expose hidden connections between him and some of the world's wealthiest and most powerful individuals, connections that hint at the scope of his influence and the depths of his depravity. Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1953. He grew up in a modest environment far removed from the glittering circles he would later infiltrate. A quiet, unassuming boy to some, Epstein displayed early signs of ambition and cunning, traits that would become defining features of his life. After a brief stint at New York University, he began his professional journey in an unassuming role, teaching physics and mathematics at a private Manhattan school. On the surface, it was a respectable path, a career in academia, but Epstein's ambitions extended far beyond the classroom. By his early 20s, in the mid-1970s, Epstein pivoted into the world of finance. He began as a junior assistant, learning the ropes of Wall Street, and eventually worked his way up to become a trader at Bear Stearns, one of the most prestigious investment banks of the time. Epstein's ascent was swift, almost meteoric. He moved through influential financial companies, earning a reputation as a problem solver for the wealthy and powerful. By 1988, he founded his own firm, J. Epstein and Company, a name that would later become synonymous with wealth, manipulation, and scandal. Even in these early years, Epstein's duplicity was apparent. He was known to possess a false Austrian passport under a fabricated identity, listing his residence as Saudi Arabia, a precursor to the shadowy life he would lead. He also became involved with Tower Financial Corporation, a debt collection agency later revealed to be orchestrating one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history, a scheme that defrauded countless investors and left a trail of financial ruin. In 1996, Epstein faced his first formal accusation of sexual misconduct, a dark harbinger of the crimes that would define the rest of his life. Yet despite these warning signs, Epstein succeeded in weaving a vast network of ultra-wealthy clients and powerful friends, spanning financiers, billionaires, politicians, arms dealers, and even royalty. He became a master of influence, surrounding himself with people who could protect him, validate him, and amplify his power. The full extent of what occurred behind closed doors and who was involved remains one of the most disturbing and tantalizing mysteries of our time. By the early 2000s, Epstein's wealth was extraordinary. Forbes estimated his net worth at nearly $600 million at the time of his death, though the origins of much of his fortune remain shrouded in mystery. Yet it was not his money alone that made him notorious. It was the darkness behind it, the hidden operations, the abuse, the secrets, and the web of influence he meticulously constructed. Epstein's wealth became a shield, a tool, and a weapon, enabling him to move among the powerful while hiding the horrors he orchestrated on secluded properties, most notably on that tiny Caribbean island. Little St. James, with its pristine beaches and hidden coves, became both a sanctuary and a prison, a private stage for one man, SMBD. Ons in one of history's most chilling abuses of power. Behind the beauty of its tropical landscape lay a network of secrecy, exploitation, and terror, a place where the world's richest and most influential could meet in shadows, while the most vulnerable were trapped within its walls. Epstein's first serious brush with the law came in 2005, but by then the web of his exploitation had already been years in the making. It began with the brave step of a desperate family. The parents of a 14-year-old girl in Palm Beach, Florida, came forward with allegations that their daughter had been sexually abused. The complaint, though harrowing, barely scratched the surface of the scale of Epstein's predations. Within months, more than 50 women stepped forward, recounting a pattern of grooming, coercion, and abuse that spanned decades and crossed state and even international borders. Each story, each name, painted a chilling portrait of a man whose charm and wealth masked a calculating predator. Despite the mounting evidence, Epstein managed to strike a plea deal that would shock the nation and later become infamous. He pleaded guilty to 2 lesser charges of prostitution, agreeing to a sentence of just 13 months in jail. But the details made the deal even more astonishing. He was allowed work release for 12 hours each day, essentially letting him spend most of his sentence outside the confines of prison. The deal was widely condemned as a sweetheart plea agreement, a striking example of how money, power, and influence could bend the justice system to protect the privileged while leaving victims silenced and marginalized. The outrage was immediate and lasting, cementing Epstein's reputation not just as a criminal, but as a man untouchable in life because of the wealth and connections he meticulously cultivated. Even after serving this lenient sentence, Epstein did not retreat from his social sphere. He continued to move among the wealthy and influential, maintaining relationships with financiers, politicians, celebrities, and royalty. Though more discreet, he never ceased to leverage his wealth and charm to reinforce a network that shielded him from accountability. For years, this web of influence allowed him to operate with impunity, cloaked behind the veneer of philanthropy, glamour, and social standing. It wasn't until 2019 that the law finally caught up with him in a way that seemed irreversible. In July of that year, federal authorities arrested Epstein on charges of sex trafficking minors across state lines, a case that promised to finally expose the full scope of his crimes, but the world would never see a trial. Just 1 month later, in August 2019, Epstein was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell. His death was ruled a suicide, but it left a yawning void in the pursuit of justice. Countless questions about his network, his associates, and the true extent of his crimes remain unanswered, fueling speculation and conspiracy theories to this day. By the time of his death, the full magnitude of Epstein's abuses had begun to emerge. Investigative reporting, court filings, and survivor testimony painted a picture of systematic exploitation. Dozens of underage girls groomed, trafficked, and coerced to serve Epstein and his associates. And among all his properties, one became notorious: the Caribbean island that would forever be associated with his crimes, Little St. James. Once a seemingly unremarkable dot in the Caribbean, Little St. James was transformed under Epstein's ownership into a fortress of secrecy and sin. Purchased in 1998 for roughly $8 million, the island was meticulously converted into a private enclave. Epstein spared no expense. Guest houses were built, lush landscaping reshaped the terrain, and luxury amenities dotted the grounds. Hidden coves and secluded corners allowed him to control every approach and every escape, making it a perfect stage for his predations. Every detail of the island's design reflected a deliberate intention: privacy, control, and the concealment of what went on behind closed doors. Epstein's ambitions did not stop there. In 2016, he acquired the island's larger twin, Great St. James, paying approximately $22 million. In a calculated effort to hide his ownership, he created a private LLC listing the property under the name of an Emirati businessman, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. This careful obfuscation allowed him to maintain a veil of secrecy, even as investigators began to circle. Together, these two islands were not just retreats, they were integral components of an empire built on manipulation, coercion, and the exploitation of the vulnerable. They were private kingdoms where Epstein's wealth, isolation, and influence converged, shielding him from scrutiny and allowing his darkest impulses to flourish. Little St. James, once just a tropical outpost, became a symbol of horror. Its pristine beaches, swaying palms, and glittering waters masked an undercurrent of control and abuse, a place where the world's most powerful intersected with its most vulnerable. What looked like paradise from the outside was, for many, a prison of terror, a private stage on which the unthinkable played out, far from the eyes of the public in the reach of justice. The true horror of Little St. James was not in its pristine beaches, its lush vegetation, or its meticulously landscaped grounds. It was in what happened behind closed doors in the shadow of its luxury. Victims who came forward described a system that was chillingly organized, deliberate, and methodical. Young girls, often still minors, were approached by Epstein or his close associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, with promises that seemed innocuous at first: modeling opportunities, internships, or professional advancement. The allure was always seductive, carefully crafted to manipulate ambition, trust, and hope. Once under Epstein's influence, these young girls were drawn into a world of coercion and abuse that often began subtly but escalated quickly. Flights to his various properties became a routine part of the operation. Private jets, including the now infamous Lolita Express, would land frequently in St. Thomas, ferrying guests and victims alike by boat or helicopter to Little St. James. The island, isolated by turquoise waters and hidden from prying eyes, became a closed ecosystem where Epstein and his associates held complete control. Model Lisa Phillips, who visited the island in the early 2000s, recounted being lured with the promise of career opportunities. Initially treated with charm and attention, she was soon coerced into performing a massage for Epstein. This act of abuse would become cyclical, repeated across Epstein's other properties, all while he insisted it would benefit her professional prospects. Phillips' story is emblematic of the psychological manipulation that underpinned Epstein's network. Trust, flattery, and opportunity were weaponized to trap the vulnerable. Other survivors recounted similar experiences. Many described the island as a place designed to strip them of autonomy, geographically isolated, heavily staffed, and structured in a way that made refusal or escape extremely difficult. Security, domestic staff, and carefully monitored movement created an environment in which victims felt constantly watched, their boundaries continuously tested, their sense of control gradually eroded. One of the most harrowing accounts comes from Virginia Gioffer, who alleged she was trafficked to Epstein's properties, including Little St. James, for sexual encounters with high-profile figures such as Prince Andrew, Duke of York. She claimed that on the island, she was forced to participate in abusive acts alongside other trafficked girls, illustrating the organized and systematic nature of Epstein's crimes. Reports suggest that Epstein maintained a disturbing routine, receiving massages multiple times a day, some performed by minors, further underscoring the depth of his exploitation. Investigations from 2005 revealed the ages of some trafficked girls, including 12-year-old triplets flown in from France for Epstein's birthday, only to be sent back the next day. Other victims were brought from Brazil, South America, and modeling agencies like MC2, operated by Jean-Luc Brunel, who would later face conviction for related crimes. These details highlight not only the geographic scope of Epstein's operations, but the premeditation and resources devoted to sustaining them. By the time of Epstein's death in 2019, it was clear that Little St. James was not merely a luxurious escape. It was a meticulously engineered site of abuse, where wealth, isolation, and power converged to shield exploitation. The U.S. Virgin Islands Attorney General subsequently filed a lawsuit against Epstein's estate, alleging that the island had been used for decades as a hub of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Even after his death, the island remained a symbol of unanswered questions. Flight logs, emails, and court records identified powerful individuals who had visited the island, though mere mention in these files does not prove criminality. Some denied ever setting foot on the property, while others acknowledged knowing Epstein but minimized their involvement. The legal and moral implications remain complex, but the island itself stands as a stark testament, a place where control, isolation, and deception enabled one of the most chilling patterns of abuse in recent history. Testimonies of Epstein's victims paint a picture of calculated cruelty and manipulation that is almost impossible to fully grasp. Maria Farmer, Epstein's first known accuser in 1996, described being lured under the guise of career advancement, only to encounter a web of coercion and exploitation. Ghislaine Maxwell, acting as both a guide and enforcer, presented herself as a mentor, easing victims into a world that was anything but safe. Her influence was subtle. T. Relentless, laying the psychological groundwork that would allow Epstein's abuses to escalate unchecked. Model Lisa Phillips recounted being invited to Little St. James with the promise of professional exposure and career opportunities. Instead, she was thrust into a cycle of abuse. Coerced into giving massages to Epstein, repeatedly exploited at his other properties, and psychologically manipulated with the insidious promise that compliance would advance her career. This pattern, initial flattery, isolation, coercion, and repeated abuse, was emblematic of Epstein's modus operandi, designed to ensnare the vulnerable and render resistance nearly impossible. Virginia Gioffer's testimony stands among the most harrowing. At just 17, she alleged she was trafficked to Epstein's properties, including Little St. James, and forced to participate in sexual acts with Epstein's associates and prominent figures, including Prince Andrew, Duke of York. Investigations revealed that even children as young as 12 were transported to the island, flown in from France to participate in Epstein's birthday celebrations, only to be sent back the next day. Victims were brought from Brazil, other South American nations, and through modeling agencies later linked to criminal activity, demonstrating the international scope of Epstein's trafficking network. Following Epstein's death in August 2019, the U.S. Virgin Islands Attorney General filed a lawsuit against his estate, asserting that Little St. James had long been a hub of sexual trafficking and exploitation. Yet even with legal action underway, the full extent of what occurred remained shrouded in mystery. Flight logs, emails, and court documents identified visitors, but presence alone does not equate to culpability. Many powerful individuals denied ever visiting, while others acknowledged knowing Epstein but downplayed their involvement. Epstein's wealth, his private island, and his network of associates provided him with a near-impenetrable shield, allowing years of abuse to continue largely unchallenged. The reckoning began almost immediately after his death. Just 2 days later, the FBI descended on Little St. James, raiding the island, securing evidence and documenting the sprawling compound. Survivors, journalists, and lawmakers began an unrelenting fight for transparency as critical evidence, including emails, flight logs, and survivor interviews, remained sealed under court orders. Powerful figures attempted to evade accountability, but persistent legal pressure slowly began to expose the intricate web of influence, power, and abuse that Epstein had cultivated over decades. A pivotal moment came in 2025 with the passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which mandated the release of all documents related to investigations into Epstein and his network. By January 2026, more than 3 million pages, videos, photographs, emails, and court filings were made public. The files revealed shocking new connections, including communications with high-profile figures like Elon Musk and Howard Lutnick, igniting political fallout and renewed scrutiny of anyone who had been involved in Epstein's orbit. Even so, much of the material remains heavily redacted, leaving a cloud of uncertainty over the full scale of the abuses and the identities of those who may have participated. Today, Little St. James and its larger sister island, Great St. James, were sold in 2023 to billionaire Stephen Dioff for approximately $60 million, a portion of which was allocated to compensate survivors. Plans to develop a luxury resort have yet to materialize, leaving the islands largely untouched. Occasionally, adventurers and YouTubers have accessed the property, providing fleeting glimpses of the compound, the temple, the sundial, and the heavily guarded infrastructure. But even these glimpses cannot capture the full scope of what transpired there. Legal battles and calls for accountability continue. Survivors, advocates, and investigators sift through millions of pages of evidence, chasing threads of connection, searching for inconsistencies, and hoping to identify those who were complicit. Every newly released document or photograph serves as a reminder that the story of Little St. James is far from complete. Now the islands stand empty. Their idyllic beaches, turquoise waters, and lush vegetation contrast sharply with the darkness that once lurked within. Little St. James has become a haunting monument, a stark reminder of the intersection of wealth, secrecy, and unimaginable abuse. It is a place where paradise masked horror, where the beauty of the Caribbean concealed acts so heinous that they shock the conscience. And though Epstein is gone, the island remains silent and unyielding, an eternal witness to a story that for many is far from fully told. Little St. James is not just an island, it is a symbol of corruption, impunity, and the hidden cost of power. And its story, though partially revealed, continues to unfold piece by painful piece, as the world grapples with the truth of what really happened behind its walls.